It is day one of working on my Halloween costume, and I've got my plans drawn up here in this book. I'm going to be following a pattern for the base of the top as well as the hat, and then everything else I'm just going to draft myself. I have very high hopes for this project and about 3 full days to complete it, so that should be enough time. Let's go over these plans. Here are all of the materials that I believe I will need for this project. I have this shiny black satiny material that I'm going to be using for both the top and the hat. I have some really nice trims, ribbons, and lace that I'll be using on both the top and the skirt. And I think this green silk ribbon will go on the hat. For the skirt, I'm going to use this fabric from Joann Fabrics. To start, I'm going to get going on this top. I've got bias tape for the edges, and I'll most likely be adding this trim to the front seams. Here, I'm just following a strapless corset pattern by Transformations by Tracy. It's linked down below. I highly recommend. I followed the Transformed by Tracy pattern up until this point, and I'm liking how it's looking. Now I'm going to add bias tape and add the boning into the boning channels. I went ahead and added the bias tape to the top. I do wish it was the thicker kind, but this is all I had, so it will do. Now I'm just going to add the boning to all of the necessary channels. I decided to use 2 different types of boning for this project. I use metal for the side seams because I want them to be the most structured, and then I used plastic sewable boning for all of the other channels because it's cheaper and easier to install. Here we are at day 2. I went ahead and added all the little eyelets last night. There are 9 of them on each side, and they're all about 1 inch apart. Now I'm just going to fold over the bias tape and hand stitch it down. So I sewed the edge of the bias tape on all of the corners to make it look nice, and I just went ahead and added this elastic to the back to lace it up. Next step will be to add trim down these front 2 seams as well as the side seams. But behind the trim, I'm going to add little loops of ribbon so that I can add some satin ribbon laced up all the way down each side. I cut a bunch of little pieces of ribbon all the same length and burnt the edges to prevent them from fraying. Now I am just going to fold them in half, creating little loops here, and pin them right along the side of these boning channels all the way down. There will be 8 on each of these 4 boning channels. So I worked on pinning these little satin loops, and I decided to actually just do 7 on each side. So this is the little side seam here. And now I'm going to add them facing that direction onto this center seam. These are all 1.5 inches apart, and these are all a little bit further apart just because I wanted them to kind of fill out the full length of this boning channel, even though it's longer than this one. Next step will be to sew really closely along the edge of this boning channel to attach them. Here I have all the little satin loops sewed on, and now I'm just going to do the other side, but first I'm going to just lace up a little bit of ribbon to see how it looks. After I do the other side, the next step is going to be hand sewing this trim right over that boning channel and covering up the little raw ends of these ribbon pieces. First, I sewed the ends of the trim in so that it wouldn't fray, and then I just used a straight stitch to sew all the way down each channel. Last night, I got some more of this black satin ribbon in, so now I can lace up the corset top. all laced up now and so cute. I will adjust these once I have it on to make sure that they're not too tight and like pulling on the sides. But yeah, oh my God, I love it. It's so cute. And there's gonna be really long bows just dangling here as well. For the necklace, I just took a bunch of beading materials that I already had. I took a piece of wire that could wrap around my neck about 2.5 times, added a crimp bead and a clasp, and added it straight to the center of the wire. This way I had 2 strings to work with. I poured all of the beads that I thought I might work with onto this plate. I used most of them, but definitely poured a few too many and had to put them all away at the end. I started by stringing these gorgeous purpley blue seed beads onto my first strand. I put a couple of strategically placed larger purple beads and used this skull button for the center. I used red seed beads for the next strand, and I wove it through the larger purple beads to intertwine the 2 strands. I did the same thing on each side so that it was even. I ended both strands at once with a crimp bead and this little loop piece that the clasp connects to, and I cut up an old bracelet that I don't usually wear. I thought that these beads would go perfectly. So I used fishing line for this last strand because it was a little bit more flexible and wouldn't bend. I threaded it through this little beading needle and I got to adding the beads. Here is how I added the little crystal to the center. First, I matched from that halfway point all the way up into the point where I'd add the next crystal. I added a couple of purple seed beads here, and then I threaded my needle through one of the larger red beads from the previous strand. I added a black bead to the center, and then I brought my needle through the next red bead as well. Then I added 1 small purple bead, 1 large purple bead, the crystal, and then I did a large purple bead and a small purple bead, and I threaded the needle through all 3 of those bigger beads shown here. This is creating a little loop for the crystal to hang perfectly. I recycled these crystal beads from an old pair of earrings that broke, so this is definitely a mashup of a lot of old jewelry pieces. I then just matched up that last part of the strand, and then I knotted it and pulled the string back through the beads to finish it off. Here is the skirt. I've decided to go with a super simple design, and I'm just going to work with a rectangle. I'm going to start by doing 2 gathering stitches all the way along the top end, and then I'm just going to put it into a simple waistband and a zipper in the back. Here I've got the gathered edge of the skirt pinned right sides together with a little waistband that I made up. I'm just now going to sew across the top edge. The waistband and the skirt are now sewed together. Before I close up the waistband, I'm going to add in the zipper. All right, so that zipper ended up being a fail because I hadn't thought about this, but it was just getting caught in all of this thread stuff. So I am going to try something else. I'm actually just going to sew a ribbon on each end. And then once I sew up the back of the skirt, I'm going to only sew up about to here, so I'll leave the top 5 or 6 inches just open, and I think that I'll be able to just slip it on, tie the ribbon, and hopefully that little gap won't show. So I just attempted one side, and I think that this will do. It's also going to be under the corset, so it doesn't really matter if it's perfect. So here's what it looks like from the front and the side. I'm going to try to show you in a way that makes sense, but I've marked the line where I want the fold to be with my pin, and I've also put the ribbon on with a pin as well, and I have them right sides together with the ribbon going toward the inside of the waistband. And what I'm going to do is fold this over right sides together, and I've got my little crease marked here with this pin. The ribbon is sandwiched inside, and I'm just going to sew along this part right here. I went ahead and sewed down that line, making sure not to catch this in there. It's good to make the waistband a little bit longer than you want, than the actual skirt fabric if you want to fold it over and sew it down like that. And now I'm just going to pull on the ribbon. It's now turned right side out and it's looking pretty good. Now I am just going to fold this in and make sure I catch the little edge part of my skirt fabric, and I'm going to stitch in the ditch from this side all the way across to close it up. So I'm really happy with how it turned out, but I accidentally made it too big. I need to take off like at least 2 inches from one side. So I'm gonna do that really quick and then I'll show you what it looks like on. Good morning. It is day 3 and the final day of working on my costume. That's not because I'm almost done, but because I'm hosting a Halloween party tomorrow night. I still have to grocery shop, I still need to cook, and I still need to clean, so all of the sewing has to get done today. On the agenda for today is sewing my hat, doing the sleeves, and also making a costume for my boyfriend. He's going to be wearing a wizard robe, and I drafted up the pattern for it last night. I have to say I'm not very good at making my own patterns, but to be honest, I did a mock-up and it turned out really well. I am going to be very, very busy. Let's get sewing. Here is what I've got going on for the sleeves. I had a little rectangle here and I just cut it in evenly on each side so that the top of the sleeve is a little less wide than the bottom. The way that I'm going to prepare these is by folding them in half, sewing along this edge here, and then I'm going to take an 8-inch piece of elastic and attach it to the seam here and then stretch it as I sew to just gather the top. I already did that to the other one and here is what it looks like. I feel like it's a little hard to see, but here is the gathering with the elastic, just like a centimeter or 2 from the top. And I've marked a safety pin where I want to add another layer of scrunching. Here I am just sewing the sleeve closed down the side. To sew the elastic on, I made sure to change my stitch to a zigzag stitch, and I just tacked it down and then pulled it very tight the whole way around. The sleeves are all prepped here. Now I just need to add a safety pin on this side in the same exact spot that I put this one. I added a mark 8.5 inches down all the way around each sleeve. What I'm going to do is use 2 gathering stitches on each to gather them until they are 12 inches around. This is just about 1.5 inches bigger than the final width that I want it to be. I gathered these up and they're about 11.5 inches around, which is perfect. What I'm going to do now is create a little channel around this gathered part, leaving about 2-3 inches open, because I'm going to feed ribbon through the channel and the ribbon's going to tie right here where I have this marking. So the channel doesn't need to go all the way around because I want it to be kind of adjustable so I can tighten it. I'm going to show you what that looks like by pinning it on right now. I just pinned on some bias tape onto that gathered part. It's wrapping around, leaving this gap that the ribbon will make up for. So I'm just going to sew on the long ends of the bias tape and then feed the ribbon into the channel. Why have I never thought to take this off? Look at this. Ah! I mean, I knew it came off, but I never take it off for sleeves. This is going to make this so much easier. obsessed with them. I think they turned out very, very cute. Now I'm just going to get started on the hat, and I'm just following a pattern for this. I will link the YouTube video down below and I'll get a couple shots of the process. Got the hat made up. I need to find some more stuffing because I only have a little bit here and it's not quite enough, but once it's on the head, it's not too bad. So all I'm going to do with the hat is just put this ribbon around it and just tie it in a big bow in the back. And I think I might just stitch it down lightly all the way around to keep it in place. Check this out. All of my pattern pieces just barely fit on the fabric that I'm going to be making the robe out of. The black is the lining, and this gorgeous red and gold shimmery fabric is going to be the outer layer. I think the fabrics that I used are a little too thin and stretchy for this project, so I am going to be recreating it pretty soon with a nice thick fabric. I really want it to look like one of the robes from Hogwarts Legacy. Here is my first little check-in for the robe. So I went ahead and sewed the lining, and then I also sewed the robe, everything except for the hood, and I'm actually wearing it right now, but I have decided that I think I'm actually just going to leave the lining out of the main part of the robe because it just looks better, but I am going to line the hood, so I'm just going to put them right sides together and I'm going to sew from here to here. And here's the robe. I don't love it. Next time I plan to make the hood much bigger and pointier. Here are just a few shots of the party setup about an hour before people really started showing up. I think it turned out so adorable. I made these little Rice Krispie treat brains, and I think all of the lights made the decorations really pop. This area turned out so cute, and here's some more food. We had so much fun. The party was a blast. Recording, damn it.
You feel like a bitch?
Thank you so much for watching, and happy Halloween.